So it is now approaching 12 months since I purchased the Ricoh GR IIIx. I want to share some thoughts with you about why I think it has changed everything for me in terms of photography. Firstly, I want to start with talking about why I decided to buy it. I wanted a camera that bridged the gap between something like an iPhone and my mirrorless camera, my Sony, which I'm filming on at the moment. It needs to be compact and the process of taking images to be stress-free and immediate. I didn't want to be carrying around loads of lenses, filters, all that sort of stuff, because that's what I used to do. I'd go out taking pictures on my own, I'd take pictures with friends, I'd take a rucksack and I'd had my camera, I'd had multiple lenses, I'd even take filters and all this sort of jazz. And sometimes it got to the point where I wasn't taking any photos at all and they were just remaining in my bag. So I wanted something that was pocketable or small enough that I could have in one hand and it wasn't as intrusive as taking around a big mirrorless camera. Around the same sort of time as well, I was a bit jaded about filming and taking pictures anyway, because I'd been doing it so long for a job. I'd been filming for a job and editing for a job for so long. So I needed something to come in and spice it up a little bit. A while ago, I bought an Olympus OMD EM5 as my compact camera, and I take that everywhere, and that was great. I love the images that come from there. But I was looking for something a bit more modern, and I was looking for something actually a little bit smaller. I initially wanted the Fujifilm X100V after buying to the hype on social media, but after being on a waiting list for about 8 months, I quickly realized that this was not a camera that was going to be destined for me. And that's what led me into the Ricoh line. It was not something I actually knew a lot about. I'd seen them here and there, but whenever I saw them, I was like, that camera doesn't even look like a camera. It looks like a camera I had when I was like 15, your first digital camera you got from Argos. It was like a Samsung, something like that, and the little camera pokes out and you take a little snap, and the image quality is pretty terrible. So I just thought, how could this thing be even in the same conversation as the Fujis and other cameras of a similar bracket? But after doing a bit of digging, doing a bit of research, I actually thought this camera looks great. The digital recipes look really interesting. The image quality looked great. The fact that you could put it in your pocket was a really big appeal. So I finally bit the bullet and I bought one. The shooting experience of the Ricoh is unlike anything that I've ever had before. It's a lightweight camera, but it's still got a little bit of heft to it. It doesn't feel flimsy in your hand, it feels robust, but it's compact and it's discreet. One of the great things I found, especially doing street photography or things like that, is people don't think you're a photographer taking pictures with this camera because it doesn't really look, it's so unassuming that people will just pass you by. So you actually can get some more authentic reactions. I was in Rome recently shooting around the time of the Pope's funeral, and some of the images I managed to get on this, because people weren't really looking at this camera like it was a professional camera, you managed to still capture some really nice authentic moments. The fact that people don't take you seriously allows you to have a little bit of anonymity that would have been lost if you were taking around a massive camera with a telephoto lens. Because of its size, you can take it anywhere. I've taken it to birthdays, weddings, I've taken it on every trip I've ever been on now. I take it to the shop sometimes now to see if there's something on the way back. And it's just something that doesn't feel like a burden to take pictures. But one of the greatest things is that how immediate it is to take a picture. You can turn it on and you've taken the picture in that quick of a time, which means that you will never miss a moment if you're willing to capture it. It's got a decent build quality. I believe it's a magnesium build, and there's some plastic and rubbery sort of tactile bits there, which is quite nice in the hand, but it didn't really feel like the £1,000 that you spend on the camera, or the best part of £1,000. You quickly forget about the price tag when you experience how convenient it is and how good the images are. It's also got stabilization, which really helps on the go, especially for those quick moments. I have found that, if you're driving past someone, you try and take a picture, it's not great, but that's to be expected. And in low light, it's not the best, but you can still get some pretty interesting shots from it. But it's not one to rely on in the same way that you'd rely on like a mirrorless like the Sony. But if you wanted to take something in low light, you just have to be very, very still. Or if you wanted to tripod, but I feel like putting a tripod on this camera kind of defeats the point of this camera anyway. So I think you just got to kind of compromise, and it's not going to be the best low light camera ever, but it's not awful as well. In a pinch, it's going to help you out. The image quality is great. The images are super sharp, super crisp. I'm really happy with the way they look, and you can also get really into the weeds with it. You've got the Ricoh recipes app, and you can dial in the recipes inside the camera and save your presets so that you can toggle between them when you're in different situations. Whether you want like a hard black and white image, or whether you want something a bit more like a film look, or something more vivid. You can dial on those different profiles, and people are really into it. There's Reddit posts and there's blogs, and as they say, there's the app, and Instagram's a great forum for that. And I really like the recipes. I use them occasionally, but it's not something I've used as much as I thought I would. I thought that I would just be shooting JPEGs for the rest of the time now, but I actually realized that one of the joys of photography for me is getting the pictures back afterwards, looking at what you've done and editing them. It kind of reminds me of when you get a 35mm film, you send it off and you get it back and you look through the pictures and you're really happy, or you're really disappointed with the images, and especially how much you've paid. But I like the process of getting home, getting the SD card out, putting it into my laptop, editing them on Lightroom, and just seeing what pictures you've taken that day. It's nice to sort of recap, especially if you're on a trip or something like that, to come back and see what you've done, and then also put your own personal stamp on it. I've got a lot of things in Lightroom that I use frequently, and a lot of settings that I like in there to dial in different picture profiles for different scenarios. So I'm just so used to the Lightroom workflow that the recipes I don't use as much, because I like the fact that you can go back and alter the different picture profile style in post instead of doing it in camera and then limiting what you can do afterwards. I also want to talk about a few downsides because it's important to do so. And I don't think there's that many, and even one of the ones I'm pitching as a downside is one that I was actually a positive for me, which is the fixed lens. So it's about a 40mm equivalent, which I think is a really nice focal length, especially for things like street photography. So I really like that, but I think for some people, it might not be the most flexible lens. If you want a real big wide shot, it's not the best for that. If you want it to get really tight, and you're far away, you really can't get the best image. But I mean, I think it's fine, and I think most people will be happy with their focal length. Another is the price. It is a lot of money, so it makes it a lot less available for a lot of people. Like the best part of £1,000 for a tiny little camera is not the best value, some would say, but it's turned out to be the perfect camera for me, given the criteria that I had in my mind. One thing to be conscious of though, actually, is on the back there's a dial, and I've been prone to occasionally knock that dial whilst taking a picture. I was in harsh sunlight when I was back in Italy recently, and I was taking pictures and I couldn't really even see the back of the screen because it's really bright outside, and I was inadvertently knocking this dial, which was altering the shutter speed, so all the images were incredibly blown out and not very pretty. But that is less so an issue of the Ricoh, and it's more so an issue of my big fat thumbs, but it is something to be conscious of. There's very little I don't like about this camera. It is so fun to use, the image quality is great, and it is completely rekindled my love with photography. That's why it's been a game changer for me. That's why it's changed everything for me in terms of photography, because it rekindled my love with taking photos every day. You're in a position to capture great moments and great photos every day if you're willing to do so. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for stopping by. If you've watched the end of the video, I'm gonna try and make more of these. This is my first try of doing this sort of thing, so if there's any feedback or anything you didn't like, just leave a comment and let's start a conversation. But if you're in the market for a really small compact camera that takes amazing images, you can't look much further than the Ricoh.